I'm having trouble remembering anybody outside of Routh. I recognize you in your picture there. Years ago. Well, I wasn't in that picture. I've been interested in.
I turned up the lights so that our video photographer could record various sections of the meeting. I'd like to say again how happy we are that we were able to contact as many of you that were not able to be with us last reunion, and we are still looking for some of our folks that we haven't got correct addresses for. Maybe we'll continue to add to it. You'll notice that you have a coaster at each plate. This is a memento of the occasion. We are indebted to John Fox for arranging to have these made and having them here for us. So these are to be taken home and treasured, I think. John Fox also has something for us, and if he'll come forward, he'll tell you about what he has brought.
Yeah. Don't speak Osage, is it?
I might. My name is John Fox, 38469483. Sometime before we got to the 19th, Woodrow Gibson gave me a name. He said that you are the Indian that can sleep anywhere. So he still calls me that. Just for a little background, I'm a quarter-blood Osage Cherokee Indian, and our ranching operations are still located on the original Osage Indian allotment land. And my grandsons made what's known as a dream catcher for each family that attends this reunion. I don't know whether you know what a dream catcher is, but this is what they look like. And there's a little explanation with each one, and I'll read it to you. The web of the dream catcher filters out all dreams and lets the good dreams flow through the open circle, catching the evil dreams and until first light when they are exposed to the sun and die. The dream catcher was kept throughout life of its power, enhanced with fetishes and personal belongings, and making each one individual and one of a kind. The dream catcher is a Sioux symbol of love. It catches and preserves and cherishes dreams of babies and adults. So I have one of these for each family attending the reunion, and we'll pass them around here.
Those of you who were with us at our last reunion recall that we had an audio tape of what we all had been doing since we got out of the service. We gave a little thumbnail sketch of our experiences after we left the service. We were interested in what each other had been doing. We're going to do that again tonight, but this time we are going to have it on our videotape. We're indebted to David Ivey for getting these videos done for us, and he's been keeping track of what we've been doing for the last 2 days. What we would like to do is have each person come up to the microphone, and each of the men, if you would please bring your wife with you, we would like to have the couple on the videotape. So as we get started, we'll ask, probably the best thing to do is just to go around each table and come forward, and for record, if you will give your name and your spouse's name at the beginning, then if you would please give us a short thumbnail sketch of what you have been doing since you got out of the service. We'll all be intrigued with what each person has been doing. Shall we start with this table and go around this table, and then this one, and around that way? And Larry, do you want to start out?
I knew he was going to call me first. I think all of you have probably met my lovely wife, Mary Alice. Well, she may have a couple words she wants to say, too, before we get done. My life after the service has been rather uneventful. After I got out of the 19th, I had no further desire to mess around with test tubes or syringes or any of that stuff, so I kind of flunked it around and done first one thing and then another. Drew my 52-20, and I guess about after I'd been out about a year, I decided I was going to have to go to work, and in the meantime, while I was drawing my 52-20, I was working for my dad, who was an electrician, and I didn't have to turn that in, so I still could get my insurance. But I guess my first real job, I decided I wanted to be a salesman, and I went to work for Electrolux vacuum cleaner sales, which was going up and down the street and knocking on doors and trying to sell vacuum cleaners. And I kind of set a goal for myself that, excuse me, that every day I had to make a sale. And I would work and work and work until I sold. And we sold everything from the vacuum cleaners to the bags that you put in them and rug shampoo and all that stuff. So after about, I guess, a year or something like that, I was working at Forest Avenue in a little town in Brazil, Indiana, where we lived. And I'd worked all the way down one side of the street and back down the other side of the street, which was several blocks, and I hadn't sold a damn thing. And it was beginning to get dark. I had 2 houses to go, and so I got in this next to the last house, and boy, I give that guy all I had. But he didn't buy anything. But he followed me out to the car, and he said, he said, how'd you like to go to work for me? I said, well, I don't know. What's your business? He said, well, I'm the staff manager for a Prudential Insurance Company. And at that time, I, as most people did in our community, considered a Prudential agent, a pretty high-class job. So I said, well, I don't know. I'd have to think about that a little. He said, well, that's all right. You think it over a day or two and give me a call. Well, I didn't have to think too long. I went home and still single and talked to my mother and dad about it. My dad told me, hey, you're a damn fool if you don't take it. So So I took the job, and I was with Prudential 5 years. And in 1952, they had a nationwide strike. And I'm still poor, so I couldn't afford to strike. So I took a job selling automobile parts. I covered the whole southern half of the state and hit all General Motors dealerships and all independents, and selling anything from metal screws to shock absorbers and what have you. And I made halfway decent money, but I had to pay all my own expenses. I was out like 4 nights a week, stay in a hotel, and sometimes I even carried a cooler around the car with food in it to try to make it. But boy, it just just couldn't cut her. And so one of the fellows there in town said, "Say, there's a new outfit here named Eckrich Meats." He said, "I understand they're a pretty good outfit to work for, so why don't you go up there and talk to them?" So I did, and the boss said, Parr said, "Well," he said, "I'll take your application." He said, "I don't need anybody right now." He said, "Too bad that you couldn't have been here a couple of days sooner, because I just hired a guy, and he starts to work Monday." And he was an Indian. I don't know if he was Osage or not, Foxy, but he was an Indian fellow. Well, the guy worked one day and decided that wasn't for him. And so that night, this boss called me up and said, "This fellow, he decided not to stay." He said, "Do you still want that job?" And I didn't feel like I owed anything to this auto parts company because I wasn't making anything anyway. And I said, "Sure, I'll take it." He said, "Well, how about, can you start to work tomorrow?" I said, "Well, I guess I can." Well, to make a long story short, I was with him for 31 years. And I worked 12 years running a sales route, and a couple of years as a route supervisor. And then I got lucky, and my boss got a promotion, and I got his job. So I was district sales manager for the remaining 17 years. And in the meantime, we had a lovely family. We had 4 grandchildren, and unfortunately, 4 children. Unfortunately, one of our boys died at the age of 15 with hemophilia. This was before they knew much about hemophilia, but we still have 3 children living. And am I right?
3 children.
We had 3 children. One boy died. We still have 2 children living. That's what happens when you get 69 years old. Right. And but from those 2, that boy and girl was left. We ended up with, now I think this is right, 4 lovely grandchildren, 3 girls and one boy. And we now have 2 great-grandchildren. A little girl 7 years old and a little boy 1 year old, of which we're very proud. And the little girl particularly thinks that her great-grandpa is the finest guy in the world, and I agree with her. So that's pretty much the story of my life. I retired early from Eckrich. I worked for a couple food brokers until I was 62, and then hung it up for good. And since then, I don't do a hell of a lot of anything if I can get by with it. Honey, you got something you want to say?
Nothing, only
Tell them something.
only that we're very happy that all of you could come, because he's worked very hard, he and Ralph and others, to get it all together. And he's really happy to see this many people here. Thank you.
Who's laughing? That's what I want to know. I'm going to tell us. Now, is that too loud? I'm going to tell the serious part first, and that is, now you rascal, you You gonna agree with what I say. I wanna, and I'm just as serious as I can be. I am. Well, you wait till I've not started out yet. My wife told me before I got up here, says, for goodness sake, don't get up there and cut the food. But hadn't been for Bill Nailon, I wouldn't have. Anyway, really what I want to say first is, I want to express my appreciation and all the love and appreciation that there is to Larry, Parr, Bill Nailon, Ed Fox, and Ralph Ramsey here, and I know there's others too, for all the work they have done. And I especially want to, and I'm sincere about this, I want to thank their wives, because any time that a man has got something to do, you bet your boots his wife's going to have to do twice as much as he is. I know that. That's true. And fellas, we thank you, because you just don't know how much good it has done me to see each and every one of you. Some of you suckers are about as ugly as I am. We were born like that. Anyway, she told me to make it short. I will. I'm Woodrow Gibson. I was lucky or unlucky to get in that 19th Medical General Laboratory, and I was the most lucky person to get out. I was teaching vocational agriculture before I went in the service, and I taught 1 year after I came out. Then I went back to school for 4 years and finished in 1951, was that right? In veterinary medicine. And we've been in Sylvania, Georgia ever since. It's poor, but it's proud. and we love it. We do. Everybody, I don't care whether they're preachers or whatnot, we call them all by the first name, which to me makes a good relationship. And the other good thing about it, it is good bird hunting territory. Now, I couldn't have done nothing like what we have done, which we've lived, and that's about it, unless it had been for my wife. I'm sorry. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is that nobody knows how much I appreciate her, and you fellas ought to appreciate your wife just as much. You know, a lot of men think that they the big dog of the house. They ain't no big dog of the house. They're not. You may think you are, but you're not. I don't give a darn where it's in the kitchen, or where it's in the living room, or where it's in the bedroom. That woman's the boss. That's right. And you might not believe this, but I do, that the majority of men married more women with more sense than what they got. That's true. You don't think that, but you women know that's the truth. Isn't that right, Miss Parr? Am I right? Thank you.
I'm Dalton Goodrich. Serial number is 181696676. This is my wife Ethel. If I can excuse me, if I can get started, I'll be all right. I was just thinking when Gibson was up here, just like we was in service, I followed Gibson in line, and he always said, "Now, if I'm going to get a shot, catch me before I fall down." Okay. I was discharged from service in February the 1st, 1946. Went back to school, finished. I had 2 years before I went in. Went back to finish school, got out, started teaching in agriculture work. And what do you think I met? My secretary. And she was taking care of me then, and she's still doing it today. During the time I was teaching that, as I went ahead and finished up with a master's degree. Taught for 34 years and retired. We moved from St. Louis, Missouri down here to Bradenton, Florida about 4 years ago. In the meantime, we have 2 children, a boy and a girl. Our son lives about 50 miles from us, and our daughter is just a little bit further. She lives in Mexico City. We have 4 grandchildren, and they are all with her, so we don't see them very often. Do you have something?
Oh, I just want to say that I'm happy to be here, and we enjoyed it 2 years ago, and it's good to see more people here this time and get acquainted with more of you. It's good being here.
And thanks to all that worked so hard for this.
You could see who the boss is. My name is Morton Green, 37148-166. I'm very bad with numbers, and that's one of the numbers that I remembered that I wish I could forget, along with the numbers for my very first combination lock. I was happy to receive that sheet of paper that says honorable discharge, December 24th, 1945, and at Fort Dix. The reason I was discharged at Fort Dix was because I used my parents' home address in Brooklyn, which is where I went that night. Spent a few weeks with them and then took a bus to Berkeley, California, stopping on the way to see this lady. She followed me out there. A few months later, and we were married in June, a couple of days before finals started. I spent 4 years at Berkeley. My field is vertebrate paleontology. For those who don't understand that word, it means fossils that have backbones. I've been fossil collecting every summer since 1947 through 1979, with one exception, summer of 1960, when they decided to operate on my neck. It was calcified. During that long interim, we produced 3 children. One boy was born in California, a true 49er, and he lives in Wilmington, Delaware. The second boy was born in Rapid City, South Dakota, where I had taken a job with the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. He lives in Bellevue, Washington. A few years later, she said, I want a daughter. No, she didn't say that. She said, I want a girl.
I want a third one.
Well, she wanted a third one, but she wanted a girl, so I said, okay, and we had a girl.
Like that.
Yeah.
Well, biologists know how to do those things. Engineers always ask me how we arranged, and I offered to demonstrate for them, but I never had any takers. Do you want to hear about my publishing record? Well, let's see. I'm co-author with other paleontologists in 4 or 5 bibliographic reference works, about 75 or 80 research papers. I've got 1 short pot boiler in press right now, another in the hands of reviewers, and wish to hell they'd send it back, and 1 more little job that they gave me to work on, and I hope that when I'm through with that, I'll have wound up my life's research work.
and do something that I really would like to do, which is nothing. Did I get it all in?
Enough.
Thank you.
Excuse me. My name is Basil Colicotronis, if that means anything. And this is my lovely wife, Jean. And we met somewhere. I can't remember where right now. But I introduced myself, and I told her that I was a Basil Colicotronis. And she says, who? She says, are you from outer Mongolia? No, I'm from Utica, New York. And her name is Jean, her maiden name is Jean Smith. So opposites, I guess, attract each other. Well, we were married, and after I came out of the service, and we do have 2 children. They're both in the dental work. My son's a dentist, and my daughter's a dental hygienist. When I left the service, I was employed by GE in the engineering department, although my major was in biology, and I went into engineering, production, and publications. Actually, that's where I met Jean. She was at that time working in the office. I worked there for about 10 to 15 years, and my memory is not that good anymore. And from there I decided, well, that wasn't for me anymore, so I went into teaching. And I taught in secondary schools until I retired 8 years ago. But I do want to say that she was a great inspiration to me. Took my gaffe, if you want to call it that. Always encouraged me many, many times when things were getting tough, and I'm sure that probably every man here has faced the same thing. And it's very difficult to follow with excellent speakers before me, like Larry Parr and Dr. Gibson, and of course Mr. Green. But when I was with the Medical General Laboratory, I came in a little late. And although I was over there before I joined it, I do know that most of the fellows, in fact all the fellows that I knew really, were good fellows. They were very friendly. We enjoyed ourselves as much as we could. And we stuck together pretty well, even though I didn't know that many at that time. And I think that's a great inspiration to me is to acknowledge the fact that most of the people are here because of the great work that Larry and Ralph did in putting this together. I retired about 8 years ago, and somebody asked me here, what do you do now? I said, nothing. What is there to do? That's why I retired. It was because I didn't want to do anything. Well, we have enjoyed ourselves. We've made several trips around the country and overseas, rounding out our life. And it's always nice to come back here on occasions like this to meet some real fine people and their wives. They're very nice people. You're very nice people. We're glad we could make it here this year. Thank you very much. Gene, do you want to say anything? Come here, say something.
I'm also very happy to be here, and I've met a lot of nice people.
All right. Thank you.
Raoul Miller, 3957-4681. Never will forget that. My wife's Yvonne, and since she wasn't able to be out here 2 years ago, I think I'll let her talk. This will be a surprise for her, although she's the talker.
No fair. I don't know his Army background when he was over there in the 19th General Medical Lab. Maybe he better tell you.
They don't want to hear that. They want to find out what happened since.
We have 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys, and we have 3 grandchildren, 2 boys and 1 girl. So that pretty much makes up our family. And we live in Escondido, California. We keep busy. We go quite a lot and volunteer projects where we go out and build schools and churches and things like that. We've been on about 20 of them since we're all retired. And it's a lot of fun. And Rob takes call and we save up enough money so that we can go on the next project. In November, we go down to Guatemala, which we're looking forward to, and since we all speak Spanish, we've gone on quite a few of the Latin countries. And then in next February, we plan to be down to the Tierra del Fuego area of Argentina. So that'll be interesting also, the most southerly city in the world. And so now I'll just turn it back over to Raul.
I don't think there's very much more to add to that, and she covered quite a bit. After the 19th, I went to college and took pre-med, but ended up doing medical laboratory technology, from which retired. But I'm still on call for the Escondido Police Department. When they have someone who's under the influence of drugs or alcohol, they call me, and I do a little vampiring.
I should add that the reason why Raul never finished medicine is because he got called back to the Korean War. And we had one child then, and we had the second one while he was in the service on the Korean War. And by the time that he got out of that, well, neither did we have the funds nor the ambition to go back and hit the books for a long time.
Thank you. Surely glad to be here.
My name is Ray Trussell, and one time I was trying to get a passport, and the man didn't like my birth certificate. He says, "Where are you in the officer's court?" And I said, 05260701. He gave me the passport just like that. So like the rest of you, there are certain things you never forget. Larry caught up with me on this second get-together of yours, and I appreciate it very much. The fact that in this December 1945 roster, which I had in my files, my name is misspelled and there's no address. It shows that Larry really has a stick-to-itiveness. He went to the AMA directory and tracked me down that way. As some of you recall, I was an epidemiologist with the 19th. And it meant my job was to track epidemics, and therefore I had the good fortune to be away from Colonel Coons most of the time. I'm still waiting for somebody to come forward with a book of anecdotes about our administrative leadership in the 19th. Certainly the officers used to sit around and figure out which one of us was going to throw him overboard when we got to sea. the man meant well, he just didn't know how to put it together with such a rather remarkable group of human beings that he had assigned to him. After the war, I, as you might expect, went on into epidemiology. I went to Johns Hopkins School of Public Health and got a master's degree in public health. Went off to the State Health Department in New York and was assigned to epidemics in hospitals. And after a year of that, I suddenly ended up in a new professorship at the Albany Medical College. And some citizens group down in western New Jersey, which at that time was considered rural, was starting an experimental health center, and I somehow or other got tapped to go and build this place called the Hunterdon Medical Center in Flemington, New Jersey. And for some reason, after 5 years, much to my utter amazement, I was invited by Columbia to go to Columbia's Dean of the School of Public Health. And the president of the university wanted the school to get active in medical care research, health insurance problems, quality of medical care problems, organization of medical care. And we certainly did. I got involved with unions. We directed a study at Blue Cross for the state. And I got conned into heading up a mayor's commission on health services in New York City. And the year I was supposed to have a sabbatical and go to Europe and see how the Europeans do it, I was drafted to become commissioner of hospitals in New York City to straighten out the mess we had written the paper about. And that was supposed to have been 1 year. And 4.5 years later, I got back to Columbia. But that job involved dealing with 21 public hospitals, of which 15 were practically in a state of rigor mortis. And I closed a couple of them and contracted the rest of them out to the private sector for their medical staffing. Needless to say, with a little bit of resistance. Then I went back to Columbia, and it really was kind of quiet, and so I was offered a chance to run a medical center down the Lower East Side, and the Beth Israel Medical Center, which is a 1,000-bed teaching hospital down there. I'm probably the only non-Jewish administrator of a Jewish hospital in the history of the world, but was without any question the best 10 years I ever spent of my life. Just a wonderful board of trustees. And at my own demand, because I believe large organizations deserve young leadership, I retired at age 65, and my number two man, who was 24 years younger than I am and was doing a great job, succeeded me. And I spent 10 years working with the Legislative Council on health care financing and dealing with at a state level with some of the stuff you're reading about in the papers today that Mrs. Clinton is messing up so badly. That's enough of a synopsis. I'm sorry my wife isn't here. She's a psychiatrist, an administrator, a volunteer in the community, a great person. And between us, we've been married 25 years. Between us, we have 5 children, 12 grandchildren, of whom 11 boys. But I have 4 great-grandchildren. They're all girls, so I want you to feel it. It's a year of the woman, okay? And I do thank you, Larry, and it's very nice to be here.
I'm Roy Chamberlain, and this is my good wife, Mildred. We were married at Fort McPherson while I was serving for the first time with Colonel Coons in the Force Service Command. So I came there from Fort Douglas, Utah, about January the 1st, 1992 or 1943, 43, that's it. Got a few centuries off there. I was transferred there from Fort Douglas because I received a letter from Harry Hoekstraw, which says, I see a paper of yours in an entomology journal, and we need some entomologists to work on mosquitoes. This is called the Country Club of the South. The buses run every 10 minutes, and we have permanent passes. So I applied and was transferred immediately to Fort McPherson. Then I was late getting into the 19th. Mildred and I were married in Atlanta. She came down by train, dragging her wedding dress behind her, and we were married in 1944. I was late getting to the 19th. I left Atlanta in, I think it was June of 1945, and it took until about October, November to get to Lady in Manila when I joined the Whack Whack crew of the 19th. And there I joined Harry Hoekstra again and continued to work on mosquitoes. Mustered out, the best I can remember was probably the end of January, first part of February in 1946, and was discharged at Fort Lewis, Washington in March the 10th. And immediately took a train and met Mildred in Montana, which was her home, and we spent a long vacation going all the way through California, and then to Hopkins in Baltimore, where with the help of Harry Hoekstra, I had enrolled for a doctorate degree in parasitology and medical entomology. Got out of there in 1949, and that was kind of the spawning ground for officers in the public health service. So it was natural that I applied for a commission in the regular corps of the public health service and got in June of 1949. Retired out of the public health service in July of 1981. And it was a very interesting time. I had the opportunity to start and develop an entomology program with research on transmission of viral diseases, and over the years I worked with just about every viral disease transmitted by mosquitoes to man and to domestic animals in both Central South America and the United States. And in the last years we did get involved with some of the exotic viruses from Central Africa, such as Marburg, Lassa fever, and Ebola, and just had begun some work with the hantaviruses when I retired. That's the one that is now active in New Mexico. So that's about it. You got something to add?
A word.
Not a word? Okay. We have enjoyed it very much and look forward to the next one.
Well, I'm Bill Hill, 35, 65, 84, 13. I guess I say it faster, I won't remember it. 35, 65, 84, 13. This is my wife, Juanita. And leaving the 19th in February of 1946, I went back to Charleston, West Virginia, where we had been raised and where we still live. Got a degree in chemistry from a local college and went to work at Union Carbide. It turned out to be in polymer chemistry, which I didn't have any training in, but they train you how to do things like that. Same thing, I didn't have any training in marriage either, because I met Juanita, and I didn't need any training. She did all the hard stuff. But it was really love at first sight, and it's been the same ever since. We have four children, 2 ours and 2 grandchildren, boy and a girl.
No. You have 2 children.
She also does a good job of keeping me straight.
You have 2 children, you have 4 grandchildren.
Well, that's right.
Okay.
She's very helpful, you can tell that. Not really not a life of a lot of high points and things like that, except unless you want to call 2 children and 4 grandchildren high points, which they are, and marriage to Juanita. we're married in 1946, and we're going to celebrate our 47th year this past June. And other than working for Union Carbide, I retired after 33 years service, and I'm very glad, like someone said, to retire to do nothing essentially, except to enjoy what we're doing. Hey, you want to say something?
I wanted to say, oh, Shorty, I wanted to say one thing. I agree with Gibson. You know, if Bill didn't have me to keep him, you know, it would be rough. But we are happy to be here.
I'm Bill Flanagan, 3135-6650. After leaving the service, I was discharged in June 12, 1946, and I met my wife in September 6, 1946. Prior to going to the service, from high school, I went to work for Sieber, which is a chemical company out of Basel, Switzerland. And I went to their dye division, and I started as a laboratory helper. And I went evenings to Lowell Textile Institute in Lowell, Mass. For 2 years. I went into the service. After 3 years in the service, I came out. I had intentions of taking the summer off, but my boss was a German gentleman, and he requested that I come back because there was in need of laboratory people. So I went back to work, and after meeting Laura in the fall, I went back and I went 3 more years, evenings, to Lowell Textile Institute and got an associate's degree in textile chemistry and dyeing. After 10 years in the laboratory, we had 3 children. I decided that I could never educate the 3 children on my laboratory's pay. So I became a salesman in 1954. I was a salesman for 39 years with the company. I retired in the end of January of this year after 52 years with the company. I have 3 children, a boy, 2 boys and a girl. My oldest boy is a doctor. He's an internist and cardiologist. My daughter's a nurse, and she has a master's degree in nursing. She works at the Burn Center at Massachusetts General Hospital. My youngest boy worked for GE as a machine operator. We have 6 grandchildren, 5 girls and 1 boy. And my wife, Laura, would like to say a word.
This has been a pleasure for us to meet all his friends and also their wives, and I want to thank Larry for finding him, because Bill has never had such a wonderful time. Thank you.
Always a show.
I'm Bill Nailon, 1-812-9783. This is my wife, Bonnie. We have 2 children, both married. Son, Bob, and lives in Houston, Texas. He's a marine biologist. And a daughter living in Richardson, Texas, where we live. And she's a housewife right now. We have 3 grandchildren, 3 grandsons, and a granddaughter on the way.
Christmas baby.
Christmas baby. I came to the 19th lab from the Air Force in November 1943, and I went to the entomology department. I had a friend at the Forest Service Command Lab who put my name in the pot to get in the Forest Service Command Lab, and I ended up in the 19th. I was trained as an entomologist and went to the entomology department. The training that I received has benefited me over my whole career. Shortly after I got out of the service in January of '46, the Corps of Engineers wanted a mosquito control biologist, entomologist, and so I went to Denison, Texas to do the mosquito control work on Lake Texoma. And that's where I met Bonnie, my wife of 46 years.
And going on 47.
Going on 47. We stayed about a year in Denison, and I was transferred to Tulsa District of the Corps of Engineers, and we spent 23 years there. I was coordinating the public health programs and eventually the fish and wildlife conservation programs with the Fish and Wildlife Service and the State Game and Fish Departments of the Corps, coordinating our project plans with them. In 1970, I was transferred to Dallas to the Southwestern Division, where I worked with 5 districts, Tulsa, Fort Worth, Galveston, Albuquerque, and Little Rock districts. And after I got there, I was mostly working with the environmental statements of the Corps. Have I left that?
That's enough.
That's enough.
You can tell them you're retired.
Oh, I retired with 39 years service in 1981 from the Corps, and since that time I worked with half-time with the Texas A&M Research Station, very close to our house, on the entomology research.
Well, I'm Conrad Routh, and this is Mildred, my wife. I think most of you have probably met both of us. I think I've talked to all of you at one time or another. And I'd like to start out by saying that my prior experience in public health apparently stimulated dear Colonel Coons to send me a telegram and ask that I would, if I would join the 19th as a parasitologist, I suppose. And so I accepted his telegram and went up to Atlanta and got a cook's tour of the Fourth Service Command, and he made a very good impression on me, which may have changed a little later, but I don't like to disparage anything about Colonel Coons, because he never really did anything to me that was, shall I say, detrimental. But I joined the 19th lab in late November of 1943. So I'm one of the early ones, one of those that lived in the tent city and had to pick leaves off of the gravel walkways. And eventually, of course, we set up the laboratory, and I can remember when we first set up the barracks lab, we were supposed to get experience in setting a lab up under primitive conditions. And that barracks lab was apparently the epitome of primitiveness. And just before we left Japan, we got the happy notice that all 858 laboratory technicians were frozen. So we felt the chill. It was a definite chill because we all had points ready to go home, and they said we couldn't do it. So we waited another 3 months, and then finally in late April of 1946, we were able to get away and take a ship back to Seattle and Fort Lawton. That began a tortuous Great Northern trip on a troop train from Fort Lawton all the way down to Fort McPherson, Georgia, through 12 states. And some of those states were some of the longest states I think I've ever been through, like Montana. And of course, Idaho was only a little state with a very little amount of territory. But we had finally got to Fort Mac, and they finally gave me my 15 cents transportation costs home, which was for the bus fare home, and said that that was the end of it, and they let me go. After that, I took a few courses at the Georgia State until I could get acceptance to the University of Georgia. Actually, it depended on whether you could find a place to stay. And finally, during the fall, before I actually went to the University of Georgia, I went on a picnic. It was an overnight picnic, and Mildred was there. And although I knew Mildred previously, just casually, from association down at the school, something clicked, and we decided to start dating. And then by December, we got married, and then soon after that, we went over to Athens and in the University of Georgia. And with all this GI Bill staring us in the face, we didn't want to see it go to waste. So I went ahead and finished up my Bachelor of Science in 1948. And Mildred was working in the Romance language department to make ends meet. And then finally I got that degree. And at that time, or just before that time, our first little girl, Puddin, arrived. And she is now with the Forestry Service, U.S. Forestry Service. And so we went ahead and made application for the graduate school and decided to try for a Master of Science. And then another year later, just before that degree was to be awarded, we had Kathleen. And so they're both sort of graduates. And then after that, I had some offers for teaching in some of the small colleges. I decided that since I had 2.5 years of previous experience with the Georgia Department of Health Laboratory, that I would use that to good advantage, and went ahead and joined them as a bacteriologist. Actually, that was just a term used because I went back to the microscopy lab, which included the parasitology, which was my true love. And other than Mildred, of course, secondary to my true love to Mildred. And then I guess it was the career extended for a total of 34 years in all. And I was 57 years old, and they said I could go at 34 years of service, so I went. And I decided to retire, and in the meantime, we had 3 grandchildren, and the oldest one just recently has produced the apple of our eye, I guess you call it, the little Jennifer, who is now 2 years old, our great-granddaughter, and 1 great-grandson. So we are, and in the meantime also we had an opportunity to acquire a little cottage up on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and that's kept us young. Mildred, would you like to say something?
Well, you can see I have had a good time ever since we were married. It's been wonderful. Thank everybody for
for all the work they did, especially Carol.
My name is Bill Brewer, and I don't remember my Army serial number, but if you're interested, I know my Social Security number. So, I went to Purdue University for about 3 years, a little more, before I was drafted. I quit Purdue for a while and went to work at U.S. Steel before I was drafted. So then I was drafted, and shortly after that, I was in the 19th Medical General Laboratory through not my fault at all. I just got there somehow, along with Strickland and Studer back there. The three of us came in at the same time, and they decided that none of us knew what we were doing, so they put me in entomology. And I want to tell you that I learned absolutely nothing that helped me in later life. But after the war, I went back to U.S. Steel and worked for a year or so, maybe not that long, I don't remember. I don't have these dates like some of these people have. But then I decided I'd go back to Purdue and finish and get my degree. But I switched majors and went from chemistry to math. And I got a degree in mathematics. And then since I had some GI Bill left, I got a master's degree in math. And I went back to U.S. Steel and worked for them for a while. And then computers were introduced, and I got into computer business and as a programmer and computer systems designer, and that's what I did for the rest of my career. And I retired in '82. And since then, I've been retired. I haven't done anything, and I don't intend to. So, but I do appreciate people finding me and ask me to be here, because that's really been great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Studer, and this is my wife Carolyn. I worked in parasitology in 19th Medical General Lab, and I knew definitely that was not my field. And when I got out of the service, I went to college, and I majored in chemistry and earned a couple of degrees there. And I taught high school, community college, and I'm still teaching at the university level during the summertime. And my second teaching job was in Oregon, and I was excited about the job, and I told my parents that I was going to teach in Oregon, and my mother looked up at me surprised, and she says, "Why do you have to leave the country to go and take a teaching job?" And I looked at her, and I was absolutely speechless, and I said, "I guarantee you, you don't need a passport to come and see me." But anyway, we presently live in Portland, Oregon, and I just thoroughly enjoyed being an educator. And Carol, do you want to say a few words about the family?
And also on the GI Bill, Lauren learned how to be the best dancer in the world.
Again, my name's John Fox, 38469-483. After the war, Evelyn and I were married shortly, about 3 or 4 weeks after I got home. We went back to school at Oklahoma State University, got a degree in agriculture, and taught vocational agriculture for about 10 years. I was in the cattle bit, a registered Hereford cattle business for many years. Went broke 2 or 3 times. Over the years, we raised a whole tribe, 5 children, 3 girls, 2 boys. One of them's an attorney, one of them's a legal assistant, 2 school teachers, and a lab assistant. I went back to school after going broke 2 or 3 times. Got a degree in accounting and finished my career out working for the state of Oklahoma in accounting as a state supervisor. And that's about it. We retired about 7 years ago, and we've done some extensive traveling, and we're still operating a cattle ranch with a few cattle and some quarter horses and Appaloosa horses. We're still in the business, so I spend most of my time at the ranch. That's about our story. Do you have anything to say, Ellen?
5 grandchildren.
Oh yeah, 5 grandchildren. I said a whole tribe.
Probably remember from the last time, we're the newlyweds. We were married in '89. This young lady and I were, we first started going together in 1941.
We work slow.
When I was at Georgia Tech, and she was going to Agnes Scott. So we went together until I got drafted in the Army and went into the infantry. And then when I came back, she still wasn't ready to get married, so we kind of parted, and I got married, and 40 years later, I happened to go through Atlanta, or into Atlanta Airport with my daughter that was going overseas, and I looked in the phone book, and her name was still listed there, Mary Louise Law. So I figured, well, she got a divorce probably and took her maiden name, but she hadn't gotten married. So I called her up. I didn't call her up. I didn't have the courage to do that. So after I got home, I wrote her a note, and we got together, and we were married about 4 months later. While I was with the 19th and overseas, of course, we corresponded. We went together 6 years, and Herman Sidwell, a few nights ago, I talked with him, and he sent his greetings to everybody. But he got a Dear John letter while we were in the 19th General Laboratory. And so we did very well, except she wasn't ready to get married when we got out. So I finished after I went in as a rifleman in the infantry and Leyte as an infantry rifleman replacement. And in the course of things, it so happened that the replacement depot, their corporal, who was who could type, got left in Australia when they moved in. So they drafted me out and one other fellow who was for a truck driver. He had an IQ of 140, and I could type, so we really saved our lives for that. So after that, they had a replacement area there that assigned people to different places throughout the whole theater, and I knew a couple of people there, and I got assigned to the 19th. So I flew down to the 19th when they were in Hollandia, about 2 months before we moved up to Manila. Then I came back on emergency furlough probably around December of 45, and then I surprised her on Christmas Day by coming down to see her in Atlanta. She had gotten a letter that day from me. So that then I went to school, and she finished at Agnes Scott in chemistry. And I went ahead and got a couple of degrees in chemistry and then worked in industry for 20 years and was married 40 years. And then worked at different, mostly polymer and plastic companies, did research and development there. And that pretty well sums it up. I have 3 children by my first wife. One is a nurse and one is an environmentalist working in Germany, and another one is an electronic technician. And it's a pleasure being here, and it's been a real fine part of my life being with the 19th General Laboratory. I appreciate all the work that's been done. She spent 39 years at Emory in research and development.
I'm Joe Renard, and this is my wife, Christine Renard.
We call her Tina for short because she is short. I'm a very modest person, and but I have to tell you one thing. I don't have any faults, but I do have one weakness. I get restless, and I like to make changes. So, and this started fairly early, and I think I learned it in elementary school. Yeah, I went to the elementary school for 7 years, and then we changed schools, and I finished the 8th grade in a different school. So when I started high school, I was in there for about a year and a half, and then I changed. I went to trade school for about 2 years, and then I changed and wanted to change. I went to an academy, and I graduated from there, and then I went directly into the service, and after basic training, we went down to Fort McPherson, and I was in the 19th until we were over in Finch Haven, and about midway through our stay there, I asked for transfer, and I got shipped out to a different outfit, and I got out of the service in February of '45, and I was out about a year, and then I met Tina over again, and I had known her before, and we got married. We settled in Massachusetts, and when my son was born 2 years later, he was 3 months old, and we decided to go to California. And we stayed out there for 6 years, and our 2 girls were born there. And then we decided to come back to Maine, the East Coast, and we bought a 110-acre farm there. We were there 7 years, weren't we? And then we moved. And then we moved back to Massachusetts. How long were we there?
But you got out of the service in 46, not 45.
Sorry. Well, anyway, we left. After we left Massachusetts, we went to Virginia, and we've been there 13 years now. And I think we'll stay there as a home base. But we have a camper. We have a mobile home, and we spend 2 months every winter in Florida. So I don't think I'll change my address permanently anymore. And I guess that's about it. Yeah, 3 children, 9 grandchildren. Do you want to say the benediction?
Amen.
My name is Harold Hoops. I don't remember all my dog tags. I know the last 4 numbers is 2411, so I'm not sure of the first 4. This is my wife Mildred, 52 and a half years. I was married about 2 years before I went into service, and I was x-raying steel for making gun mounts for the Navy when I was drafted. So they thought when I got into the Army that I x-rayed steel. They said, you can x-ray people. So that's the way I come to get into the 19th, into the medical corps. And of course, the 19th never had an x-ray machine. So I guess they didn't know what to do with me, so they put me out in the maintenance department. And like somebody said, we gathered leaves and built sidewalks. And I was in pathology a short time. We shipped overseas. So then I was the head of the maintenance from then on. I didn't go to college, but I went to furnace schools. It's different ones, a short time. Got a job with a furnace man, and 5 years later, he quit business, and so I started on my own. And my wife and I have been in the furnace, plumbing, and heating business for 43 years. And so I had about 5 years before that. We've had a very good business, and we've
done real well with the help of my wife. Without her, we would have never made it, I'm sure. She's been a good wife and a good mother. She's done the book work and raised the family. We have two wonderful girls and 5 grandsons. We have no granddaughters. And I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about them because she's the one that seems to writes all the letters and takes care of that part.
Well, there isn't too much else to say other than we do have the 2 daughters and 5 grandsons, 2 of which are married. And our oldest daughter was a beautician, still does hair work, but she contracted polio at 2.5 years and was crippled and wore a brace until she was 15. And that day the doctor told her she wanted to be a nurse so badly, and he said, no, I'm afraid I can't do any more surgery. She had 5, and you'll have to give up the nursing because you're going to have to wear a brace the rest of her life. And she took it off and said, I'll never wear it again, and she never has. Our youngest daughter is director of continuing education at Union College in Barberville, Kentucky, where her husband is a doctor teaching music in the music department. And their oldest son is church music. He has his master, or he's working on his master's now. He has 2 degrees in that. So they're quite a family of musicians. Both our daughter and her husband have done church music for, I guess, ever since they've been married. It'll soon be 25 years. So we've had, don't have any great-grandchildren yet, but hopefully one of these days. And I certainly want to thank all of you who have done so much. We weren't able to come 2 years ago, but we've certainly enjoyed it this time. And thank those who have worked, because I know it's a lot of work to put this together.
Howard Levy, 32991-277, I still remember it, and my wife Marcia. To be brief, after leaving the 19th and being discharged from the service, I went back to the grind, 4 years in medical school, 4 years of residency training, 27 years in the practice of internal medicine in Philadelphia and South Jersey. And then when the youngest got out of graduate school, I said, it's my time to fly, and I went back to training, became a nuclear medicine specialist, and that's what I do. And I'm not happy about retiring. I still would like to work.
I just wanted to thank everyone for persevering, especially Larry Parr, who kept writing to us. It was wonderful getting your letters and to be here with all of you. Thank you.
I'm Ted Ahrens. This is my wife, Ketta. 191-186-78324. I came from Fresno, California, and some years later joined the 19th. And when I first met most of you fellows, I went into shock. Over half of you had accents. Later, got to know you very well, and when I went overseas, the friction started. There was a philosophic argument between what we were supposed to be doing and what we were doing. This went on at a low-key rate until we went up through the coast, Leh, Guna, Abuna, Sanananda, Finchhaven, Hollandia, and after a short while there, I was reprimanded and discharged for insubordination. I was the first man out of the outfit, but others followed me, and I felt that the group here was a hell of a resource, and I fought with Coons simply because this fantastic assemblage of 20-year-olds
who had a spirit, background. Your teachers were fantastic. We were the second string, all of us, but we came from great teachers who wrote the textbooks. They were 40, 50 years old, so they were too old to go in the jungle, but they could put you in the jungle because you could handle it. Well, this led to my demise in the 19th, but for the following year or so, through Leyte, Samar, the Philippines, I always kept in touch with many of you because I was on detached assignments and I had technical questions thrown at me. I had to come up with answers, and the only brains in the territory was the 19th. So I used to seek you out, 26th Lab and other groups, and find many of you on detached service and ask you the questions, what's happening, do we have plague here or not? And the only bona fide answers came from you, and I report these to people I was responsible to. And so this was, I considered you an unbelievable resource. Unfortunately, we didn't achieve the greatness that I think was capable of being had. But the last of the war in 45, the war was over, and I got a call from a friend, or an acquaintance, who said, "Ted, you're the only person I know that took a course in public health." I could have named half the people in this room also, but I said, what do you want this for? He said, "I'm just appointed Surgeon General or Port Surgeon of Tokyo. Will you come up?" So he took a plane up, and I got on a tug called the Mactan, and we putt-putted up. Took about 6 days. We came into Tokyo Harbor, and I was a Port Surgeon Command. We did this for 3 weeks, and were relieved of duty by the Port Surgeon Command of Reims, France. 22 men, well-trained, had done this for years. They knew all the red tape, everything. So after that, we were on individual assignments, I was, and left the Army in February of 46. So I think that the positive thing was that the 19th was an unbelievable group, and had a spirit that I've never encountered since. It was a lot of fun. Everybody was a character. We had a lot of humor, and the sadness that prevailed from time to time was overcome with unbelievable, horrible jokes. But we all managed, and I think it was a good experience. Some people have said, "Well, okay, you're a better man because of it." So I punched him in the nose. But this essentially, I still think of you, and I still think of the first reaction I had. I see you today, I go into cultural shock again, because I think of you as 20 years old. But this is how it is, and I'm very, very happy to be here. Can I?
I really have been hearing about all of you for 39 years, really. And you've all lived up to your notices. Very happy that we came across the country.
Walking up here, everything was so quiet, I had to look around to see if everybody was awake or not. I want to thank Larry and the committee. That's too numerous to name here, but you did an excellent job. Everyone is very appreciative, and we just can't say enough for you. By the way, my name is Manuel Slate. I'm probably one of the few New England Yankees up here, and I hope you can understand me. But my wife Bess is here. We have a beautiful daughter, a young lady who lives close to us, and we see her often, and everything's going fine. When I got discharged, I took a quick refresher course and became a registered pharmacist, and I had a pharmacy for about 44 years, and left that and became a part-time consultant with the Blue Cross Drug Program in Massachusetts. I should say medics. The word drug is bad now. You don't talk about drugs. I think that the stories we've all heard have added to a lifetime of recollections of 50 years, and I think that we've all added something to our lives, and it's an era that we look back on and smile and shake hands and talk again. Thanks very much.
My name is Martin Steele, 3263-5917. How can I forget it? After leaving the service, I resumed working for the U.S. government in the Naval Research Laboratory as a physicist, working in the field of superconductivity, which is still an area of some interest, as you know, especially with a big structure that's going on in Texas, the superconducting system that is supposed to be able to produce new particles, new physical particles, to explain everything in the world. I used the GI Bill after we got out to get some advanced degrees in physics, and this became my profession after I got out of the service. I worked for RCA Laboratories in Princeton for a good number of years, and then including spending 3 years for them in Japan, setting up a laboratory. Subsequently, I also worked for the General Motors Research Lab in Detroit. And this is my wife, Marion, with whom we have 4 children and 9 grandchildren. And I think that's going to be the limit. We are delighted to be here and want to thank Larry Parr and all your staff for doing a fantastic job. In fact, I don't know how you did it. So that's it, and it's been a delight to see so many of the people whom we haven't seen, in some cases, since the end of the war. But there are a few of you whom we have been seeing, and as usual, it's been a pleasure to see them. Thank you.
When my husband went off to the war, I went to the train to see him off, and I had tears in my eyes. And I thought, oh, this poor man. Now, I'm home. I'm several months pregnant. He's going off to the war and a hell of a life, and it's going to be so terrible. When I hear all of you fellas talking, I think you had one hell of a good time.
I'm Jim Toffaletti. When I got out of the Army in December 1945, I went to work shortly, a few months later, with Chevron Chemical Company in Florida, and I started out in field research work, and then I drifted over into technical sales. I was still doing field research work, but I had an order book in my hip pocket, and so then I later became branch sales manager in Florida and the West Indies. Then from about 5 years later, we transferred to Shreveport, Louisiana, where I was district manager for the Southwest. And after about 7 years there, my big business there actually was cotton insecticides. And it got to be horrendous. The year before I left there, we sold 14,000 tons of cotton dust, and we made an average gross profit of 2 bits a hundredweight. And I knew this couldn't last, so one morning when I was down in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, the national sales manager and I were having breakfast together, and he said, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do about our Paris operation. He said, our Paris company needs a man over there. And I said, I don't know what to do. I said, well, what's the deal? And he said, well, are you interested? And I said, sure, I'll throw my hat in the ring. Well, anyway, I was chosen for the job, and I didn't tell Jane. And so I came home that evening, and I said, Jane, how would you like to move to Paris? And she said, Paris, Texas? I said, no, Paris, France. Anyway, we had 3 small children at that time, one preschool and two in 10 and 7, and a little girl. And anyway, we moved to Paris, and this was tougher on Jane than it was on me. But I worked there 12 years. I worked all over Western Europe, and had 2 jobs, one product development and one on manufacturing. I was technical director of our Paris company, and so I was in charge of our manufacturing plant down near Marseille. We had about 100 people working down there, and they were all French. Anyway, I had a very interesting life, and the other part of my job was field research work, finding uses for new products and new uses for old products, and so I had a group of field research men working in Europe on that, and we worked with distributors too. But I worked all over Western Europe and Africa. I did a lot of work on tropical agricultural crops like coffee in Kenya and Ivory Coast, and rubber in Liberia, and tea in Kenya, and a lot of other crops. And anyway, it was a very interesting life. We moved back in 1969. I came to Richmond, California, and I worked there until 1981 with Chevron Chemical in regulatory affairs and registration. So I've had an interesting life, and Jane has seen me through all of this, and I thank her very much for her patience and support, and I needed a lot of it a lot of times. We have 3 children. We have our older daughter lives in France. She married a French boy, and we have 3 grandchildren there. We have a younger daughter who doesn't have any children. She's in the Netherlands right now, and her husband's going to take a teaching job at the University of Manchester this winter for maybe 1 or 2 years, and then our son lives in California. So that's it. We have 2 grandchildren in California. That's it. Thank you very much. We've really enjoyed this. We missed the 1991 meeting. I regret now not having come. And Larry, I want to thank you and Ralph and everybody for Bill Nailon, everybody for what you've done. Thank you very much.
They saved the last, or the best of the last, almost. There's 2 to follow me, 3 to follow me. I've been sitting here wondering, what in the hell am I going to tell these people? My thoughts are, you big Irishman. My thoughts are, what we have done is really not important. It's the carpe diem, seize the day. And to be with you and to share this day is really our highlight. Briefly, I came out of service, as all of you did. I finished school. We worked and went to school. I had children, 3, 46 now. Worked for the Union Carbide. I saw Bill once or twice in the same city. Maybe I saw Bill last time, 20 years ago perhaps. So close and yet so far. I do want to thank Ralph and Ed, Larry, and the rest of you who've done so much to get this gathering, and we're just glad to be here. Thank you.
I'd just like to say this is just a wonderful group, and we're just so blessed to be with you. God bless you all. Thank you.
I'm Bud Love, 348-30702. We ought to start with the most important things first, I'm sure. This is my wife, Ruth, who married me before I got into the service.
Since that time, we've produced 7 children. We are momentarily looking for our 21st grandchild. We have 4 great-grandchildren, and anticipate a good many more in that direction too. Professionally, after the war, I went back to the Communicable Disease Center, with whom I'd been working before I got into the service. Went back to school first at the University of Georgia, and then later at about 4 years at the University of Pittsburgh, where I got into epidemiology. It's interesting, too, that in the 19th I was assigned to the entomology department. I have trouble now talking about entomology. I can consistently say I was working with the epidemiology people. It reminds me that when I first went to Pittsburgh and was working in the epidemiology department, I was constantly confusing the nursery because I was working with staphylococcal infections in nurseries. I kept calling the nursery the insectary. And to the chagrin of a number of people there. I stayed with the Communicable Disease Center until 1969, when I transferred to the Environmental Protection Agency in Surf Triangle Park, North Carolina. Worked with the health effects program there for about 7 years. When I retired from the federal government in 76, then went to Chapel Hill as a part-time faculty member and taught epidemiology for until 89, when we left and done nothing since then, except cut grass. I'm the best grass cutter in North Carolina. You have something to say?
I just want to thank everyone for all the work they've done, and we enjoyed it in 1991, but we have really enjoyed it extra special this time. Thank you very much.
I would like to add my thanks to the efforts that you all have expended too.
Well, I'm Ralph Ramsey, Carolyn, my wife. We are both biologists in slightly different fields. When I got out of the service, I went to work almost immediately with the state health department because the doctor that I worked for, Dr. McPherson, was looking for somebody to work on ticks and Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And our old college professor, both of us had the same college professor, us. And he recommended that Dr. might get in touch with me, and so I directly went to the health department as a field biologist working in this particular field. Continued to work in the field until some years later when I transferred to the laboratory, and I worked the remainder of the time with the health department as a laboratory person. Carolyn and I do a lot of hiking and camping in our younger days anyway. We both worked for the health department, that's where I met her, but later we spent a lot of time with the Appalachian Trail Club hiking and camping. And as our boys grew up, we have 2 boys, we continued family hiking and camping. Both my boys like the outdoors, based, I hope, on our experiences hiking and camping. I worked with young folks, scouts and so forth, as a nature counselor for years. I'm presently trying to teach oldsters something about nature, and we're involved with the senior citizen program in town, and have gotten involved with the elder hostel program. I know that some of you are familiar with the elder hostel program, and it's highly recommended if you are not familiar with it. It's a great program to get involved with for education and travel. I guess that pretty nearly covers it, Carolyn.
I have been struck by one thing as I sat here and listened, and that was how wonderful so many of you men were to pay tribute to your wives. And let me tell you that we do appreciate that. Thank you.
Carol, come here. Carol says that she don't want to talk. Carol says she don't want to talk.
No.
But I want to say something on behalf of a man that I consider a hell of a good friend of mine, and I think most of the people in here did, and that was her husband, Cliff. He was our first officer, and I always considered him a very close personal friend. So I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to say this. Carol,
Thank you.
Say anything?
Well, I will say that I don't know my Social Security number, but I do know 015469665. And it was a very important 4 years out of his life. Probably the only uneducated, non-college person that came out of the Army. But we did have a very good life. We had an elevator business. We worked side by side for 30-some years, I in the hardware department, and he in the management department of the elevator. And we have just one son. He was conceived here in Atlanta before Cliff went overseas. When you talk about they had all that fun over there, I kind of think the same thing. David was born in December 1944 after the unit went overseas, and Cliff didn't see him then until a year and 1 month later in January. I was out in San Francisco just lately, and I was telling one of the ladies that it was made an impression on me. We went to the top of the mark where I think probably Cliff and Eichhorn spent a few hours at the bar waiting to go overseas and get their unit, all their equipment together. And went where I saw they have a Liberty ship in dock now. It's very unusual, but it's just there for demonstration and for the tourists. And then when we went over to Sausalito on the ferry, I looked at the Golden Gate Bridge, and I thought, now I know how he felt when he went under that bridge with that Liberty ship, that wondered if he'd ever get back. But his experiences were very, in fact, I guess I have to say this about Colonel Coons. My husband was an enlisted man's officer, and he had to be the go-between between Colonel Coons and you men. And so it was rather hard on him. I had a lot of letters about how maybe it was a good thing they weren't issued guns. But anyhow, thank you for encouraging me to come, Larry.
And ask if I would play it. It's about 2 minutes, and it's self-explanatory.
Hi, I'm David Hill. I'm sorry I can't be with you all, but my medical situation demands that I not travel too much right now. I send my warmest greetings to all of you, especially to those with whom I was on TDY for a year, John Rosenlund, Connie Routh, and Lynn Boxdale. I also wish to commend Larry Parr and Ralph Ramsey for organizing the search and this marvelous reunion. A few words on what I've been doing this past 48 years. After being released from the Army at Fort Devens in Massachusetts, I went to Brown University to finish my bachelor's degree and then on to the University of Chicago to study for a doctorate in zoology. In Chicago, I met Letty Voss, a commercial artist who specialized in fashion illustration. We were married in the Bond Chapel of the University of Chicago on July 8, 1950. My career took us to many places, to Bar Harbor, Maine, where I was a fellow at the Jackson Memorial Laboratory, to Washington, D.C., where I worked for the National Research Council for 10 years, to Paris and Saint-Aubin-les-Aubers, France, where I was Director General Adjoint at the Société des Éleveurs, Charles River, France, to Providence, Rhode Island, where I was Director of Research Services for Brown University. I retired from Brown University at the end of 1984. Letty and I have two children, Richard, a lawyer, who was until recently Assistant Secretary of Administration and Finance for the state of Massachusetts. He is married to Debbie, also an attorney. They have a little girl, Elena, and live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, not far from where we are. Our daughter, Suzanne, is an artist who uses computers to design teaching materials. She is married to Bob Sims, a computer engineer. They have two children, Nina, age 10, and Richard, age 7, and live in Michigan. Letty and I now live on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and we would be delighted to see you all. Just give us a call and have a wonderful, wonderful reunion.
Thanks, Larry. Again, I would like to thank all of you for giving your little stories, and we all were interested in finding out what each other has been doing over these years. We hope, as time goes on, we'll be able to find some of the fellas we've missed so far in trying to run down addresses. Maybe the next time around we'll have some new faces with us. We have one or two things to finish up. Bill Nailon has something to present now.
This year, the United States Mint put out some 50-year commemorative coins. So we thought that it might be, well, if we could have a set of these coins to give away as a door prize here at the reunion. What we have is a 2-coin silver set, and it hadn't been opened. I just received it a couple of days before the reunion. And we need somebody to draw on that. We put everybody's name in the bucket.
How about this young lady right here?
That'd be fine.
I'm trying to find something.
Ethel Goodrich.
Tomorrow's schedule you already have printed. We will have a bus waiting for us to take us out to Fort McPherson for the memorial service and the brunch. And we'll leave at 10 o'clock. It's about a half an hour trip out to Fort Mac, I think, so that we'll be there a little bit before the 11 o'clock hour. The Chaplain Guistwite, happy to have us meeting with us with him for his program, and he'll give us a nice memorial program. Roy and Mildred Chamberlain were married in this chapel on August 21, 1944. These next still pictures were taken at the Sunday brunch at the Officers and Civilian Club at Fort McPherson.
have about 50, a little over 50 members who are deceased, members of our outfit. I don't know.
Anything else you want to say?
These posters contain the pictures of most of our deceased members.
Okay.
On this table are albums of some of the members brought. Albums from the service in the New Guinea and Philippines, and then Fort McPherson.
You look the same, and if I might have put this yesterday.
Okay, this poster here is just a few group pictures that we had available that we put on the poster board here for people to see.
This is Conrad Routh. I'm one of the members of the forward echelon who left the landing area and the rest of the laboratory behind. And we went directly to the Philippine Islands, and this is the initial landing on Leyte. This shows MacArthur and his landing. Before we actually landed, though, we had President Osmeña of the Philippines and General Romulo, Philippine general, climb down the ropes on the side of our ship and meet MacArthur in his landing craft. And we watched a very historical event taking place, and then they went on ahead and landed. He made his famous speech, which he mentioned that he returned to the Philippines and asked for the Filipinos' help. Now, this is the three of us and Lieutenant Barksdale. Lieutenant Barksdale was in charge of the unit. This is John Rosenland, Frank Roth, and me, Conrad Routh. And this is some scenes from the landing area of the Red Beach. This is the hospital that we finally landed in, finally organized in. It's called the Cathedral Hospital. This was a reprint that was done from the Atlanta Journal, and shows the cathedral, and where they took out some of the initial facilities in the cathedral to make wards. They made 2 wards on each side, on either side of the front of the cathedral floor. And this is the operating room, and this is a series of tents that was set up, service tents, and ours is the last tent on the side of the cathedral here. So that's what we worked from in investigating our various diseases. This is one of the most concerned diseases, schistosomiasis, or blood fluke, and we had a great quantity of this. And first of all, in the Filipinos, we found it and knew that it would be found eventually in the GIs, particularly those that had wade through the rice paddies. And about a month later, the GIs came down in droves, and they had to set a special hospital up in order to treat just these schistosome cases.
Right up front here.